Welcome to the My Kitab Podcast, a podcast on book publishing in India. 3 times a week, your host, Amar Vyas, will interview authors, translators, editors, and publishers to learn how to get your books published in India.
You know that I am a big fan of audiobooks, and you can also enjoy your favorite books in the form of audio through audible.com. You can sign up for a free 30-day trial for audible.com by visiting mykitab.in/audio for a free 30-day trial, and you get 2 free audiobooks. You can choose from over 180,000 titles, including bestsellers, science fiction, romance, mystery. Better still, why not try listening to the audio version of a book written by a guest on My Kitab Podcast? Once again, visit mykitab.in, and that's mykitab.in/audio, and follow the link which says sign up for a free 30-day membership with audible.com.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the My Kitab Podcast. Our guest today is Ravanan, who is a Vice President with Dailyhunt. Dailyhunt is an app through which you can buy and read ebooks in regional languages of India besides English. But before we get on to our discussion with Ravanan, I had a few updates. Today is the 6th of July 2016 and it's a Wednesday. That's when we will be releasing the episode. Regular listeners of My Kitab Podcast are familiar with our release schedule. Every Tuesday is an interview with a guest, and every Wednesday is when we have the news and analysis cast. But starting last week, I have changed the format a little bit, and that is largely because we've been tracking the download statistics, and I've noticed that during the second half of the week, the number of downloads and the engagement from listeners increases. Going forward, if we do see higher number of downloads on these days, we may move the release schedule, but that's a discussion for a later time. Among other updates, this is the month of July. The monsoons have more or less firmly set in most parts of India, though in Bangalore right now it's still not raining every day. It's cloudy, it's pleasant, in fact it's beautiful. The view that I get from my living room where I'm recording this episode from, the view is fantastic. It's green space surrounded by buildings. I am a little bit more chirpy right now, and that could be because of the amount of coffee that I have had, even though I'm trying to cut down on my coffee and ramp up my writing. Speaking of writing, this is the month for Camp NaNoWriMo, and the book that I'm working on is Urban Sophisticated, which is book number 3 in the Amol Dixit series. I have been writing it in bits and pieces over the past few months. Now, finally, this month, I have decided that it's time to wrap it up. So that's the goal for this month. Balgatha, our podcast on children's stories, has been receiving a great response. And this week, finally, we are releasing the next podcast, that is the audio narration of my debut novel, NRI, Now Returned to India. I would be launching it in English first, followed by Hindi and then Marathi. We had originally planned to release this in May. The reason for the delay is that my old laptop was taking way too long to process for editing and the post-production. I finally decided it was not worth my time to wait so patiently. Audacity, the audio editor, would crash left, right and center. Just was not a very pleasant editing experience. As a result of which, finally, last week, I got a new MacBook Pro. That's where I am going to be doing all the editing. The recording would still happen on the Raspberry Pi setup that I had mentioned about earlier. That's a bit of an update. NRI podcast would be initially released in English, first 3 chapters, and then the next week we would have Hindi version. That's the plan. Finally, we would also have the Marathi version, and we would be releasing it through iTunes. It will also be available on the Kamakshi Media website, on Facebook. It will be available on the Amar author page, which was originally the home for the NRI, the book. Speaking of iTunes, I would really appreciate if listeners, particularly from India, could leave reviews for My Kitab Podcast. I would really appreciate it. The link for that is smarturl.it/mykitabcast, and I would include that in the show notes, or if you go to the My Kitab website, on the bottom right you would see a clickable pop-up. It will take you directly to the iTunes page where you can leave a review. Starting this week, I have also decided to spend maybe a couple of minutes talking about one podcast related to book publishing, which has had a great influence on me. Today, the first podcast I'm going to cover is the Sell More Books show, which is co-hosted by Jim Cockrell and Brian Cohen. I owe a lot to Jim Cockrell because before launching My Kitab podcast, Jim was kind enough to spend some time with me on a Skype call wherein some of the advice that he gave really helped me in launching My Kitab podcast, but more importantly, sustaining it in its current format. Sell More Books show covers 5 news stories related to book publishing. There are also some trends and there are sometimes guest interviews. But what I really like about the show is the friendly banter that goes on between Jim and Brian. I think they have a fantastic chemistry between them. There's a little bit of a probing and a prodding. This is really a very informative show. In fact, some of the influencers in the book publishing world, including some podcasters, they only listen to the curated news that Brian typically harvests from multiple news sites. The reason why we included the news and analysis section in My Kitab is also as a result of the influence from the Sell More Books show. Those were the rather longish news and announcements before we move on to today's episode.
A very good afternoon. My name is Amar Vyas. I'm your host and the creator of My Kitab podcast. Our guest today is Ravanan Natarajan. He is with a very exciting company called Dailyhunt, and the listeners of My Kitab podcast, especially those of you who follow the news and analysis cast, might be familiar with this name. I've spoken about Dailyhunt a couple of times, and I first of all really appreciate Ravanan agreeing for the interview, and secondly, those of you who may actually see the recorded feed may not know that we were struggling for nearly 20 minutes to get this call up and running. I can see Ravanan smile as well. So without further ado, over to you, Ravanan. Would you like to introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, and we will get going.
And thanks, Amar, for the opportunity. My name is Ravanan. I head the Ebooks division for the Dailyhunt app. Dailyhunt app is India's largest Indian language content distribution platform / app, so to say. And I had the Ebooks part of it. So that's as far as my professional introduction is. I have spent a fair amount of time in telecom companies, largely with Airtel for 7-8 years, before I moved into Dailyhunt. The parent company is actually called Versa Innovation. We were also into white label telecom services for almost 4 to 5 years before we pivoted into mobile internet space by picking up the Dailyhunt brand, which was erstwhile the News Hunt, right? So that's about me. Quick introduction of my professional side.
That's fantastic. So, Ravanan, thanks for your introduction, and we will get going. But we first want to talk a little bit more about you. I don't want to let you go so easily. You are into running, and is that something that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah. So I kind of been into athletics right from my school days, representing school, and then I got into some serious athletic stuff during my college. So wanted to become a, so to say, professional athlete in my college days. And I used to specialize in long jump, and incidentally the sprint, 100-meter sprint also comes along with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think, I moved away from that particular dream, and then I went into my career path. Post that, I think after a break of, 10 years, and I got back into running. So I came across a running club in Bangalore. It was a community-based running, clubs. That kind of got me into running, but this time I moved into long distance. So I currently run half marathon.
Great. The reason why I asked was that after a very long time, nearly 15 or 17 years, I've started running again. And so I'm realizing that I'm not as athletic I used to be. And secondly, it's literally a relearning curve all over again.
I'm telling you. You thought you've done it in the past. It's going to be easy. Actually not. It's going to be more tough.
It's more difficult. It's more frustrating because I used to be good. That's the thing that keeps ringing in your head. And I guess that's a lot to do with how much you're training and how much you're practicing. And
yeah. The other side of 30, 35, I think your age catches. You're on I would say the downhill.
Sure, that's very true. So great. I think the reason why I brought that up was largely also had to do with practicing what you do, right? Day in and day out, or maybe periodically. Secondly, having the focus and discipline. These are also the qualities which make a successful author.
I guess you're right.
Right? It's not that I used to be good at writing. I stop writing. I pick up my paper and pen or start typing 10 years later thinking, oh, the words will start flowing, and they don't. Right? That's great. So I brought this segue about writing because now we can move on to the main segment of our discussion, and that is about Dailyhunt. And you mentioned that earlier Dailyhunt was into a different business line, different service line, and then you pivoted. And I will add the link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. The listeners might be interested in knowing you've been with them for about, 7 or 8 years now?
8 years now. Yeah, I joined 1 year after the company was founded. So yeah.
Wow. So you've actually seen the entire growth, the initial growth phase, the pivot, as you said, and now how they're doing.
Yeah, you're right.
Awesome. And now, in addition to ebooks, you also look after the e-textbook side of the business, right?
So it's not e-textbook, the exam preparation part of it.
Exam prep. Okay. That's a category that's doing phenomenally well, at least on some of your peer sites. I'll not call them competitors yet.
Lot of action happening at that segment.
So let me actually build a little bit on that, Ravanan. Do you see this segment growing? Because I believe academic publishing is about 70% of the overall print market, at least in India, right?
You're right.
So even on the e-space, do you see some spillover of that?
Well, I think we foresee a lot of action happening on mobile/internet space as far as exam prep is concerned. Reason being is that the vast majority of Indian population is still aspiring to be in a government job. Right? And incidentally, in India, most of the exams are getting we're soon going to be having all online exams to start with. RRB moves to online exams. So once the entire world, the exam taking moves to online, then the preparation also moves online, is what we see happening, right? And for India, I think India skipped the entire PC cycle, and India is a mobile-only country, so to say. So most of the people's first interaction with the internet is on a mobile, and that's become more or less the convergent device for any consumption.
Right.
So being in the mobile space and also looking a lot of action and traction happening at this exam prep, we clear the right space there. Obviously, a lot of action happening there, but all of us a little early, I guess. But then the market would soon be maturing as far as the exam prep is seeing a lot of traction.
Okay, that's great. Because one of the things I keep doing, and I'd refer to the news and analysis cast. So every Tuesday we have an interview with a guest, and every Wednesday for the past 2 months I've started introducing a segment called, I cover 3 or 4 news stories related to book publishing in India. And then I also pick up one particular topic. So it could be like how to price your book on website X, or what are the trends happening in a particular genre or a particular segment. And what I've been noticing for the past past couple of years now, is that January to May is practically the test prep books. That's a tongue twister. The exam preparation guides, which are actually dominating the bestseller list, no matter which site or source you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then of course, the other side of the story is that come June, I think June and July is a bit of a transition, and then August onwards till the end of the year, you see all fiction books dominating, and suddenly you have all the non-fiction authors who suddenly have to struggle to find their space in that whole environment, right?
There is some kind of a pattern that we've also started seeing being evolved over the last 2 years. You're right. There's this very seasonal, season genre kind of a match happening throughout the year.
Right. So in terms of, and this is purely on a lighter note, so I'm taking a cue from Bollywood. So the Bollywood producers stopped releasing their mega budget movies during IPL, right?
Yeah.
So as the IPL keeps moving between, I guess, end of February to early April or thereabouts, depending on the season, the major movie releases keep moving. Do you see something like that happening, which is anchoring around this whole examination kind of the thing? Because like you mentioned, all the exams move to online exams, then they need not be on a specific date, right? They need not be on the third Monday of a May, for example.
So it actually depends a lot to how the entire the public sector bodies who for whom we're going to write the exams for, the banks. It depends on the recruiting cycle.
Yeah.
Right. They kind of time it throughout the year, and they also a lot of exams are kind of scheduled in such a way that does not clash with any exam.
Right.
Largely, you find a lot of these generalists coming in and wanting to take any government exam. They want to do a banking exam or do an RRB. As long as the government exam, they're okay. Right.
Right.
I think so. The cycle is pretty much set. I think more to do with their entire recruitment cycle. A lot more things than them looking at the market overlapping with some of the launch. So that's how the exam prep works. Whereas your books, fiction is very, very, very different.
Mm-hmm. Right? So let's come back to the fiction and non-fiction books for some time now, because that's going to be the crux of our conversation. When was that pivot point, and what actually made Dailyhunt take a deep, hard look at the ebook market in India, and then decide that, hey, this is the market that we want to get into?
So a couple of things. So just to go back a little on our history. So NewsHunt was earlier called Dailyhunt.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Dailyhunt.
Other way around. Yeah.
Dailyhunt was called NewsHunt. The other way around. NewsHunt was primarily kind of founded to ensure that we render Indian language content on mobiles that did not support news.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, about 2012 and before.
Okay. Yeah.
Android virtually didn't exist. More of Symbian and Java phones that existed at that point of time. So the entire premise of NewsHunt was to, get Indian language content, mobilify it or modify it in such a way that it renders well on non-smartphones or feature phones that we used to call it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then once the operating system mobile phones supported it, then we kind of scaled in terms of, content, users coming on board. So we've been around, so to say, in the journey of Indian language content being, rendered across mobile phones,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's how we started off. So at that point in time, we kind of busted a myth that people don't come to mobile phones to read. So, because one, it required a decent phone, then it required an internet connection.
Yeah.
It required, kind of giving away time to reading something on the phone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere around 2012, when we kind of acquired NewsHunt and started scaling. But in exactly a year and a half's time, we saw huge traction.
Mm.
We kind of started hitting, 2 billion page views a month. So we kind of busted a myth that people would not come, to your mobile app to read newspapers. And I think we've seen this trend across all languages wherever we had content coming in, right?
Mm-hmm.
The only difference with books, with respect to books, is that the newspaper reading was free. The customer could get the app, come read the newspaper, for free of cost. Obviously, he's paying for the data charges, but yeah. We don't charge for consumption of content.
Right.
So what we realized, since we've kind of busted the myth of, reading on mobile, why not move another segment which would kind of say, a natural progression from newspaper to books, right? So we thought, so why not try that? The only difference what we wanted to do in this ebooks was try to see if the customer is ready to pay for it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Selling free is easy. We kind of started experimenting with that around February 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a huge base coming to our news. We started upselling the box product, and I think we've very good traction, more than overwhelming response to our ebooks venture. And then once we had the ecosystem also seeing numbers, then I think we also, the other side, the supply side of ebooks also grew. So now we have 1,800 publishers who are providing content to be hosted on the platform.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The only difference that, the only problem that we tried to solve, which people were not trying to solve, was the fact that the content did not exist in digital.
Mm.
Indian language books do not, predominantly 97% of the content don't exist in any digital form.
Right.
If at all they exist in any digital form, they're not in mobile consumable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just, image PDFs or, scan or microfilms or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought, rather than waiting for the market to come and solve, the ecosystem to solve the problem, why not we take it upon ourselves and try to solve the problem? So that's kind of worked in our favor.
Mm-hmm.
So on the kind of supply side of content, we wanted to solve one distribution, which is a big problem in ebooks, right?
Right.
Stores beyond category B town. There's only one bookstore in every B town that we know of.
Yeah.
Right? Distribution is one. The other one was digitization, which we took upon ourselves. We said we'll do it. So we took content in any format available, spent a lot of time, money and energy digitizing it. There's obviously a lot of learning curve that we had, because Indian language content is extremely fragmented. Mm-hmm. Different formats, different fonts, fonts, pirated fonts, a lot of.
Yeah.
One book will have some 700 fonts, but each piece of content could have 700 fonts.
Yeah.
That's the problem we solved as far as the demand side is. On the supply side, on the demand side, we kind of aggregated all the best of Indian language content. Had already coming and reading newspapers, so we started upselling content to them. People came, saw books that they've never seen before in their language being available to be read. And an additional thing that we kind of did, what we believe was a market game changer for us, was that we made more affordable.
Mm-hmm.
One is affordability is not just about discounting, but also making the entire payment process easy.
Yeah.
So what we did was we enabled mobile operator billing.
Mm-hmm.
What it essentially does is that it allows the user to pay for a book through the mobile bill entry.
Right.
So, given the fact that our mobile banking / credit card penetration is very low, with our mobile penetration per se being high, so the mobile wallets, so to say, kind of helped, kind of spurring on the growth.
If it's going through the mobile operator, you're only adding to the cost of the book. Now, what was the solution to that problem?
So we've actually, the mobile operator per se, also they opened up themselves to the idea of carrier billing only very recently. Right? Till very recently, they used to charge a sizable amount of the money that they collect from the customer. They used to keep that.
Right.
But I think they also seen the entire market changing outside India, where a lot of this carrier billing drives a lot of mobile commerce, so to say.
Yeah.
So there is obviously a cut, but the numbers actually. If I had to sell only through credit card, I would have sold only probably 1/20th of the number of books I'm selling.
Right.
So I think the scale kind of offsets the economics.
Okay.
We sell, 20 times more books on our operator billing platform than credit card.
The other thing that you guys did was pretty smart. That was actually selling it chapter wise, right? You purchase chapter 1, you like it. You buy chapter 2, you like it. You buy 3. But if you don't like beyond that, you don't have to buy the entire book.
Absolutely. We kind of take the sachet, model onto books, right? In fact, serialization does exist in certain countries like China, right, where content is sold by chapters, right? Yeah. But there the content also is being created by chapters.
Right.
So what basically did is we try to make content more, snack sized, both in terms of consumption, commitment of consumption time and money, both. So kind of trying to remove every possible entry barrier into somebody coming and read on a book.
Oh, so there is an intervention from Dailyhunt's side, if for breaking it into chapters or something like that. That you decide on a median word count or something like that, and that's how the chapter wise is done.
Not really. So we've gone by the actual number of chapters in a book.
Okay.
And in certain cases, we go back to the publisher / author and ask them, what would be his definition of a chapter.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I think he would know better as to when you kind of, stop the chapter and when you take it to the next. It's like, serializing a movie, right?
Yeah.
There should be some logical extension. There should be some, some kind of a, effect that he has got to move on to the next chapter.
Right. That's awesome. So, let's talk a little bit about languages. So first of all, very commendable that, you decided that you're going to focus on Indian languages. I don't think, at least when you started, you guys started, not too many publishers looking at the regional languages, right?
Not
and the very existence of My Kitab podcast is based on the 3 pillars. Okay. Number 1 is, I really want to help out first time authors. Secondly, I want to see more new content, contemporary content coming up in Indian languages, right? And thirdly, audiobooks, and we'll probably talk about audiobooks towards the end of our discussion. But I could see this missing element as far as new content is concerned in contemporary, like sort of regional languages. What I saw was that either these are verbatim translations, maybe unauthorized translations of some bestsellers abroad, or it was licensed content and the translation quality was pathetic, right? And I've seen like New York Times bestsellers or you name a bestseller. I've seen the Hindi and Marathi versions of those, and they read like a manual rather than a non-fiction book, for example, right?
I think it's lost in translation.
It is lost in translation. It was not a criticism what I was talking about. I'm talking about the challenges that exist in the regional language space. Again, how did you overcome that particular challenge?
So, I think the biggest problem for Indian language content creators was that they didn't find a market. They didn't find demand.
Okay.
They didn't know how to reach out to people. Obviously, everybody knew that people want to consume content in the language. So that's why I think that probably bring on a very interesting statistics, right? India's, if you may, has got 74% literacy. Of that, only 12% is English literacy.
Right.
62% can consume only, in their language, right?
Yeah.
But for creators, I think they obviously need consumers. They need to reach out to consumption. The market, if it didn't exist, or probably they didn't know where it exists.
Yeah.
Right? And that's one problem we're trying to solve. Right. But like you said, even now there's pretty much a lot of inertia in creating new content. Largely, people are adapting, other language content. Not much being done to create new content, contemporary content. So, that exists, but I think once they've started seeing numbers, yes, now we've seen a lot of people creating content, and it's not just us, right? And the self-publishing is kind of picking up across.
Right.
Overall, the ecosystem is kind of waking up to the whole concept. So I see a lot of new authors wanting to write, want to come up there, and see the content being created and consumed rather.
Oh, that's great. So I had a related question to that, and that is related to the point that I brought up, that sometimes the translation may be an unauthorized copy, right? So how is the copyright are there any checks and balances? Let me put it this way: when you accept a particular book from an author or a publisher, at what stage of the process is there this check mark saying that there's a due diligence carried out, that the book is, it does not contain any uncopyrighted material per se?
So we kind of have our entire backend process team is kind of fairly neatly laid out right now because a lot of learning over the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So the first step is a particular process, what we call as the input check team.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so we have a team of people from language experts across all the 10 languages. They kind of scrutinize the content there. There is the metadata that comes from the publisher or the author. There is this content. There's a lot of check happening. And then they go back. They have a lot of secondary sources of information because we have a team out there.
Right.
To check on the validity of the content, and then we go live. Right. Having said that doesn't solve the problem completely. Right. We kind of trust the author and publisher to have had the rights. Right. So we normally go with the known authors and publishers.
Mm-hmm.
But once we get into full-fledged into self-publishing, that is going to be a problem, right? While the indemnity may be on him, but still there's a lot of onus on us to ensure that none of this is copyright theft.
How about authors outside of India? And a great amount of listenership of My Kitab podcast, nearly about 2/3 of them are outside India. They are authors who are very keen on looking at the Indian market, right? How would they go about contacting? How do they get their content either listed or, down the line, how do they get it translated and published through Dailyhunt? Any thoughts on that?
So there are two parts to it. So one is as far as getting the content published on Dailyhunt, it's fairly straightforward. So we have an email ID. We do not have a self-help kind of a portal where they can go and upload right now because it's Indian language content being in different formats, fonts.
Yeah.
So we don't want to leave it to the author publisher right now. We want to kind of take control of that process, right? We have an email ID called self-publishing@dailyhunt.in. I'll probably ping you on that.
Sure.
It's self-publishing@dailyhunt.in. Once they're sending the mail, the team contacts the author or a publisher, right? And then kind of lay out what are our agreement terms and stuff like that. And then we get the content. So we don't take the content before the agreement is kind of closed, right? We take the content, we send it to the input check team, right? And the input check team maximum takes 48 hours to check whether we can go ahead and publish this content or not, right? That's the kind of, and so for us, we already have close to around 20-25 authors based outside India who are publishing, right? Quite a few of them are doing fairly well for themselves, rather.
Right.
So we, in terms of payment, we pay them in USD. We don't have USD, right? The payment terms are fairly straightforward. So every 30 days from the month we start, we pay them off. So, we do not really differentiate between an author sitting outside India. We get content, we publish it. So we're also working on certain promotion tools that we can probably help the authors with. So we kind of create, links which the author could distribute across anyone. And it so works that even if you do not have the app, it gets the customer to download the app and takes him to the book wherever the book is at the app. So we're kind of working on. We've already done that. Very soon we'll have probably individual marketing tools being created for authors because that's something that's missing right now.
Sure. No, that's great. So let me talk about translations a little bit. And I want to talk about translations from 2 points of view. One is I'm an author in India. So let's say I've written a book in Marathi and I want to see that translated into Gujarati, Kannada, and then maybe Tamil, just to pick 3 languages, right? I'm obviously not familiar with the scripts or the processes in any of these. Is there any support at this time which is offered by Dailyhunt?
So actually, Dailyhunt is largely a technology platform, right?
Okay.
We're trying to get the demand side and supply side together.
Right.
So we don't get into translation per se because, to a large extent, the creator of the content needs to be really, really happy about the translated content. Unfortunately, he doesn't know the other language. We've seen a lot of great, amazing books, having lost the context or, lost the entire, whatever, the core of the story.
Yeah.
Because, so we don't get into that per se. We have contacts. We kind of put you on to people who do translations, but I think we leave it to the author. And in fact, a lot of Indian authors are very finicky about whom they choose to be translators. They need, before they get a very high level of confidence, they do not allow their content to be. Take example of Amish Tripathi. He spends a lot of time with his translator. to understand his psyche, figure out if he's understood the psyche of the story. So it's a very touchy subject. We don't want to get there, right? We kind of being a pure play technology platform.
Okay. So even a marketplace kind of a place or a clearinghouse kind of a model is not something that's on your radar at least yet when it comes to translations. Okay. So for the processes on the Dailyhunt side of things to start would be that the author or the publisher hands over the electronic file to you and you take it from that point on, irrespective of the language and the 10 or 11 languages that you offer right now. It has to be in one of these. That's your minimum requirement. It has to be a finished edited product.
Yeah, that will be ideal because it skips the pipeline. I mean, we also accept content which is not in digital form.
Okay.
Yeah, so we take a lot of physical copies, but we would encourage digital copies because then, we don't need to spend time and energy in trying to convert.
Right. So do you charge any fees for converting the print to digital and then getting them up on your website and selling it?
We don't do that.
You don't charge them any fees?
We don't charge anything. That's why I said we took the problem on ourselves to solve it.
Okay.
Publishing.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about marketing, and we have about 5 minutes, so a couple of questions and then we'll start wrapping up. Ravanan. So, when is the marketing effort required? Now, each language comes with its own complexities. Each, the genre, subgenre, seasonality and sub-seasonality, festivals and things like that. What's your approach on these multitude of problems?
Yeah, so actually, that's a huge problem that we kind of grapple with this on a daily basis. So we have language expert in each and every language that we have. And we take people from the writing community largely, right? And also people who are in touch with the audience, right? Like you said, the genres differ, the kind of seasonalities differ, the number of readers, the depth of readership, cost of the book.
Yeah.
Everything varies from, between Kerala and Tamil Nadu, you see a huge, right? So we have language experts who have a very, very strong touch with their language per se, right? In fact, the 5 of them are authors themselves.
Okay.
So then they know the drift, so they are in touch with the trends there. They know the personalities. So over the last 2 years, a lot of learning curve has kicked in. So now with a lot of data that's come out of consumption patterns within our app, plus a lot of secondary market sources, talking to publishers, we have a fairly sorted out calendar, so to say, and a schedule of how we want to promote the book, what kind of books we want to promote, right? So that's kind of sorted right now, but that is a huge problem that we have because it's 10 different languages.
Right. So technology platform and then book marketing. Is that do you see Dailyhunt evolving, offering those kind of services as well to other publishers, book marketing in regional languages?
Yes. So that's what we kind of trying to do. First, we'll figure out the online marketing piece of it.
Yeah.
First, we'll figure out for ourselves first.
Yeah.
Right. And then use that knowledge to probably, enable publishers to do, kind of grow their kitty too. Right. So we're looking at a concept called publisher sub-stores, where each publisher has a store within my store.
Right.
Yeah. And he gets a lot of marketing, support there. Yeah. He gets his own store. He can manage his own store. As long as while I cannot drive traffic to his store, he also gets to drive traffic to his own store.
Right. So it's like a kiosk in a supermarket, right?
Absolutely, yes. We kind of work in progress to be out.
Okay, awesome. So you certainly have a lot on your plate. You talked about self-publishing. So is that going to be print on demand as well, or is that going to be ebook self-publishing only?
So while we are talking to a lot of POD partners, right, we want to offer it as a value-add services right now. If he wants to, probably get a POD of a particular book, we're going to offer that now. He's going to soon tie up with a large POD partner in India, right? But we will provide as a value-added service.
Right. It's not a line of business that you want to enter.
Yeah, we don't.
Okay. Awesome. So I think that gave us quite a bit of information about this beast for Dailyhunt, and certainly now we got a little bit of better understanding as to why it's been growing the way it has.
Yes. So we get close to around 7 million users every month on my book app alone.
On the book app, okay. That's a very interestingly high number, ridiculously high number. Okay. So have you looked at in-app ads as another revenue source then?
So we do a lot of that outside the app, and when I mean outside the app, so we do not really interrupt the customer's reading experience. But a large, in fact, my entire marketing campaigns are around his genre definition. Right? We have something called the genre affinity score for customer, depending on what genre, what language he's read. So we largely recommend, books to him. We kind of upsell. The store also kind of becomes a little more personalized to you based on what you read.
So I think we'll wrap up. We are run out of time. I don't want to take any more time. Before we part ways, what's the best way people can reach out to you?
So, we have two ideas. Like I said, we have your friends at dailyhunt.in. And anything to do with us, you please send us a mail to yourfriends@dailyhunt.in. We will respond to you. Or you can take my personal ID too. So Ravanan@dailyhunt.in. So
Awesome.
these are the best ways to reach to us.
Great. We will add the links to these sources in the show notes. Ravanan, thank you so much.
You're welcome, and thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for listening. If you like this show, please leave a review. You can also subscribe to the newsletter by visiting www.mykitab.in. That's mykitab.in.